Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alpin Sheth. I work at Mercy Corps Ventures, and we're really thankful to the Africa Fintech Summit organizers for working with us together to put on this specific roundtable, which we think is really timely and really relevant for a lot of reasons. I really want to thank all the people who've been able to join this roundtable. I think we have a really wonderful group. I just wanted to start off to say a couple of things. Today is a really interesting moment in the world of digital currencies. Today we have close to 80 plus central banks designing central bank digital currencies. And places like Nigeria are seeing some of the highest transaction volumes for cryptocurrencies. We're also seeing some of the largest online platforms like Facebook, which includes WhatsApp, and then PayPal, Square, and others integrating digital currencies into their services. Meanwhile, there's a vast sea of people that don't have even basic access to payment infrastructure and the ability to participate meaningfully as equal members of the economy. A lot of us see digital currencies and new underlying technologies like blockchain being a potential game changer for access and cost globally. But we all know that it will take innovation across products, infrastructure, policy, and more to make that a reality. Luckily today, we have a really wonderful and amazing group of speakers and leaders in the field that can help us better understand what is at stake and what we can do to address the challenges of financial inclusion in the African context. So briefly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let people introduce themselves, so that not necessarily a full bio background, but just your name and your position and your involvement in the digital currency space and the financial inclusion space. Thank you. So I'll start with Dante, if you can, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, Alpin, and thank you to the organizers for the opportunity. So I'm Dante Disparte. I'm the Vice Chairman and Head of Policy and Communication for the Libra Association.
Thank you. Ezekiel, please.
Sure, yeah, thanks. And thanks again, Alpin. My name is Ezekiel Kopek. I am the head of official sector engagement for C Labs, which is one of the companies that's working on the Cello network.
Thanks, Ezekiel. Yele, please, next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yele. I'm the CEO of Bundle Africa, which is a social payments app for cash and crypto, and also the managing partner at Microtraction, an early stage VC firm that invests in fintech.
Thank you, Yele. Dugusi, can you go next, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Ndebisi Anyawu, and I'm the country director for Mercy Corps here in Nigeria. Mercy Corps is an international organization that's focusing on building resilience. Glad to be here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Aisha, can I ask you to please go next?
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope it's afternoon wherever you are. My name is Aisha Isola Kinwo. I head the licensing and payment group for Central Bank of Nigeria. And basically, we're responsible for licensing new fintechs, and we approve new products and services. I look forward to your successful engagement. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Aisha. And Noah, can you just give a quick intro on your side as well? Thank you.
Great, thanks. Pleasure to be here. My name is Noah Balesambu. I am a co-founder for an organization called Crypto Savannah, and I also serve on the board of the Uganda Blockchain Association and the National Task Force on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. discussing how digital technologies can be used in various spaces, and glad to be here.
Thank you, Noah. So I'm just going to get us started off on some initial topic questions. So as I mentioned, I think one of the challenges that we're seeing is that, or one of the challenges that we're seeing is that a lot of different policymakers are choosing to take different routes around the use and the purpose of these technologies and whether or not they even want them in their jurisdictions. I wanted to refer back to an article, a famous article in Harvard Business Review that Dante, that you just put out, called "Could Digital Currencies Make Being Poor Less Costly?" And you've indicated a couple of different things. And in there, you've mentioned that it's really important for regulators to have clear guidelines so that innovators can start to think and develop creatively technologies that can address some of these challenges. Can you explain a little bit more in detail what you're thinking and what you're proposing in that?
Sure. Well, if you think about it, Alpin, and for the colleagues and the listeners, if the definition of being banked continued to imply the access to a brick and mortar banking system, then we would argue that the banking system has reached a point of diminishing returns. And the same holds true with telephony and access to the internet. That if access to the internet depended on the ability of physical infrastructure to reach people, then we also know fixed line telephony would have reached a point of diminishing returns. And when you take how technology has changed virtually everything in our lives, even today's discussion is emblematic of that. We have managed to transform, remove friction, remove intermediation, cost, and so on from virtually everything except for value transfer. Value transfer remains, even in very efficient environments, a privilege, not a human right. And when you talk about issues like financial inclusion and financial access, you have to start from the foundational principle of, is it really your money if you have to pay someone to hold it for you, and if you have to ask someone to spend it, whether it's in a domestic setting or a cross-border setting? And so from that vantage point, when you think about what technology can do, and with the advent of blockchain as a foundational technology, second only to the internet, we now have an opportunity to extend that perimeter of payments and that perimeter, what I call the bottom rung of financial mobility, to the billions of people who are on the margin. The only thing that's lacking is, frankly, a lack of imagination, a lack of general investment, and thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, the lack of general regulatory clarity on the treatment of this asset class, these types of innovations, and extending the perimeter. But if we get it right, it's an all ships rising proposition. And I think if there's any continent, that can gain the most from this, Africa, I think, has an opportunity to chart the path to the future. And then some really promising examples on the continent as well, like M-Pesa and others, that show the promise of mobile money and digital fintech innovation when it comes to financial access.
Thank you, Dante, for that. Actually, on that note, I wanted to pass the mic over to Noah. I know that Crypto Savannah has engaged with regulators, particularly in Uganda, around the use of blockchain and digital currency. And I'm curious to know, what have you seen since you've started Crypto Savannah and some of this process of working with regulators? And what are some ideas that you think might be relevant outside of Uganda as well?
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying we have been very fortunate to, maybe about 2 years ago when we held the Africa Blockchain Conference, we were fortunate enough to get the buy-in of largely the government in being able to explore the benefits of blockchain before we get into the application in fintech. So right from the get-go, then demonstrating to them the potential benefits that these new technologies can bring, we're able to rally, a critical mass of government interest in positioning and discovering more about it. And so since 2018, we the first one. And then 2019, when we held the subsequent one, there has been some movement in terms of accepting and adopting particularly decentralized ledger technology, DLTs and blockchain, in being able to solve these fundamental challenges. And so from that perspective, we have been, we've received quite some interest. However, we remain as a country still at that place of decision making as to how to handle the different applications of these technologies and what, as Dante has well put it, what the implications are. So it's one thing to talk about CBDCs, but it's another thing to talk about the implication of a CBDC in a country where mobile money moves about $1 billion every month. And so it is, because then it'll affect what middleman is, a massive middleman that's there, that is between government issued currencies and the utility that they bring on the ground. So it's an interesting conversation. Maybe I can speak to one of the interventions that we have discovered as an entity, and when we talk about financial inclusion, I think of three pillars. There is the infrastructure pillar that Dante has talked about. Then there is the identity pillar. If we don't even if we don't address it, it's also going to become and bite us in the back. And then there's of course then the utility. What do I mean by utility? What use cases are driving the digitization of transactions on the ground? I'm still using Uganda as an example. We have a very massive growing microeconomy through which it's largely served by cash. Yet we find interventions like mobile money are starting to eat away into that microeconomy. And so I feel that digital currencies are going to unlock even further the micro transactions that cannot be accessed by cash, for its traditional nature, but then also by mobile money with Visa sort of system that can't get to the ground. And so that opportunity is what the benefit that could be unlocked by digital currencies.
I don't know why.
So Alpin, I don't think we can hear you.
Event is even for the
Hey, Alpin, I think your microphone is muted.
Alpin, we can't hear
Sorry,
you.
I think, were you able to hear me? Sorry.
No, sorry, your microphone was muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll just restate the question. I think I actually just wanted to shift the conversation over to Aisha from the Central Bank of Nigeria. What we've found is that, or what we're seeing is that the central bank and the government at large is actually very interested in moving the economy in a digital direction. They've actually renamed several of the core departments and commissions to orient more towards a digital economy. And I'm curious, with all the different options that we're seeing, whether it's mobile money, digital currencies, Nigeria has a very vibrant fintech landscape. And I'm curious to know where you see the role of digital currencies, if any, at present in Nigeria. Thank you.
Hello, are you there?
Yes.
Sorry, I lost connectivity. Can you take that again?
Sure. Yeah, actually, in short, I was just going to say that as Nigeria, can you hear me?
Yeah, but very faint.
Yeah, let me, I guess it's just an open question to you to ask. How does?
Some few seconds. Let me resign.
Sure. For the moment, I can switch over quickly to Yele. Actually, I can ask him a question. I'll come back to you. Yele, basically a similar question, which is that, you're operating in a dynamic environment. Bundle just launched this year, as I understand, and has already grown very quickly, and is now launching in Ghana. I'm just curious to understand from your perspective, what role do you see digital currency playing in this dynamic ecosystem in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much. In Nigeria, for now, we're still playing.
Yeah, go ahead, Yele.
Yeah, I'm fine. I think I can hear you now. So, as a regulator, one of our primary responsibilities is to ensure that we promote the payment system in an efficient manner and also keep it safe. And it's also a known fact that sometimes operators' activities precede regulation. But notwithstanding, we need to ensure that we keep the system safe and secure and ensure sustainability. So for us, we're still learning the curves. We have looked up to some other jurisdiction, and we can see everyone still battling with what is going to be the backup assets. First, you must understand that settlement risk is very, very key, and every regulator ensure that it is not reversible. So what that means is that anytime I make payment, it is guaranteed that the beneficiary or the receiver gets value. And so when you come to speak to a currency that you're yet to weigh where is the backup value, should anything go wrong, where is the fallout? Where is the insurance? In a normal business setup, of course, you put in place insurance that, okay, if you're unable to meet obligation, at least you have a secondary or something to fall back on. Currency is even more serious because it represents a store of value, basically medium of exchange. And sometimes there's debate around, has digital currency been able to achieve all of this function? And so the debate is ongoing. As a nation, Nigeria, we're looking towards the digital DLT, but more blockchain technology. So notwithstanding, the initial thinking has always been that digital currency and blockchain technology comes in one package, but over time we can see that you actually can unbundle and focus on which one is a win-win for you. So for us, we're still looking around policy around blockchain technology, and as soon as we're able to deal with that, one step at a time, then we look towards digital currency. Again, the concern is around financial inclusion. If you look at the target or segment market, do you think they're comfortable? They're still battling with, bringing them into the formal financial segment. So you want them to leave their comfort zone of they can handle their cash physically. So now we digitalize the cash or the currency. They're yet to settle into that. We're speaking to another currency. I think we need to take a step one after the other. But for us, an advanced country that has, more financial inclusion and people are very clear about the requirement of and their responsibility. I think if they're comfortable introducing such currency, everyone, it depends on what you're excited, and very importantly, like I said, you must ensure that you provide an efficient and secure environment for everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Just on that note, I wanted to actually address this next question to Ezekiel from Cello. As a regulator or previous regulator now working for C-Labs, what are the key reasons, as you're working with regulators in different countries and across different jurisdictions. What are some of the key reasons you see countries might move towards digital currency? What are some of the things you're hearing as you engage with public sector policymakers?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the big things, and this is certainly a theme of this conversation, is this idea of financial inclusion. When I talk to central bankers, one of the things, that they talk about is the fact that, a significant portion of their population, and sometimes as much as 3/4 of their population, is excluded from the financial system, whether that's voluntarily or whether that's involuntarily, because they live in remote parts of the country that maybe don't have the banking infrastructure that some of the cities do. And so they're certainly looking to make sure that they can include their citizens within that financial services sector. I also think that they're looking to that they're upgrading their infrastructure. Dante hit on it in the fact that we have been doing so much work on making it really easy to send a letter around the world, right, with email. We've been doing it really easy to communicate, but the financial services sector is the last one now where we haven't done a lot, globally, to really make sure that it's easy to transfer value. And there's certainly reasons for that, right? I mean, as a former central banker myself, I understand the fact that it's, you need to be careful and cautious, especially with people's money. You want to make sure that you're doing it in a proper way. But there are, lessons to be learned. And I think, especially the example of M-Pesa, we've all learned from it. And I think this idea of mobile money is a fascinating one. And central bankers are really starting to get their head around, what they can do with the programmability of money, and whether that's, helping, include people from a financial inclusion perspective, or whether that's also adding new channels of monetary policy, such as, the changing the velocity of money or something like that. So there's a lot of different angles. I think one of the biggest ones there certainly is just the financial inclusion, to make sure that their citizens can take advantage of this great technology.
Thank you, Ezekiel. And I wanted, just because I mentioned that we have people from various parts of the infrastructure layer to the actual services and products that people are using. We have Yele here, where we've seen that you've just launched Bundle very recently, and already it's grown quite a bit, and you're branching out in other countries as well, like Ghana. Based on your experiences, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing as the use value and the use cases? Like, what makes it compelling to people, and where do you see this going in the future? Sorry, we can't hear you, Yele.
And sometimes physical, you can't just take it off.
I'll try to mute everybody else.
This one is even better. It was one day I did 2 a.m.
Yeah, can you go ahead, please, Yele? I know your mic was working just earlier, so not sure why it's not. Maybe you can, I don't know if it's helpful to reset it, or I was going to mention to everybody that with this new virtual format, we were going to probably have some hiccups like this. But yeah, we still cannot hear you, Yele. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pose a question to Debussy from Mercy Corps. And if you have a chance, maybe you can reset the browser or something like that, because I think the audio was working prior to this, so I don't know what the issue might be. Yeah, can I ask you the question? Aisha mentioned that there are various segments here involved, and it may or may not be relevant in some ways, or it may or may not be as useful as we think for people who have limited or no access to financial services to already jump into digital currencies. As someone who has programming across very challenging. Hello?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead. I'll come back to Debussy.
Okay. So I have to reconnect. So I think as someone who's operating Bundle, it's been a very interesting experience. And I loved a lot of the comments from the other speakers in the roundtable. But I think what I've learned is that people are looking for alternative forms of currencies, but it's still quite niche, right? So for me, the goal of Bundle was to build a wallet that made digital assets and currencies as simple as possible and make that accessible for the average African. And even though we've achieved, about 100,000 users in the last 6 months, mainly in Nigeria and Ghana, it's still something that is used by a very small group of people, right? And I think it will take some time before we get to a point whereby digital currency is seen as any other, traditional fiat currency. And it will come down to not just the identity part as well, although that's a problem, right? So people who are financially excluded don't necessarily have like a passport or formal identification methods. But even those people that have, things like passports and can be verified through KYC, they don't see the utilities today, right? They don't know what they're going to use a stable coin for or what they're going to use Bitcoin for. The people who are active on Bundle today essentially use it as for two things. One is as a remittance platform and essentially as a investment purposes, right? They like the idea that these assets can appreciate in value, even though it can be quite volatile. But I think for it to go mainstream, we have to build use cases on top of it. And what I think about a lot goes back to, financial services that people can have access to because of their location. What gets me excited when I wake up in the morning is that the way the internet made information readily available for everyone is the same way that blockchains and digital assets should decentralize the quality of financial services that you have access to, right? Your location shouldn't depend or shouldn't determine the quality of the financial services that you have access to. And there's research that actually shows that the quality of financial services has tremendous impacts on the economic prospects of individuals. When you can get a loan for 7% in your local currency because you're born in the US per annum, but in an African country, you're paying sometimes double digits a month, then the poorest people are actually getting the worst financial services. And so the beauty of digital assets is this idea that you can give people in developing countries, the same quality of financial services as if they were in the US or in Europe. And I think if we can figure that out and continue to simplify the user experience, then people will vote with their feet. They would use this not because people are saying this is a good technology and it's the future, but because it solves day-to-day problems for them. I can say we've solved that problem, but I think the openness of crypto, with Libra, with Celo, the Ethereum Foundation and Binance, and so many companies working towards the same goal, it makes me very bullish about the future of digital currencies in the world.
Thank you, Yele. Yeah, did anyone else want to make a comment? I was going to move over to the question around those that are financially excluded, but does anyone want to make a quick comment on what Yele just said? Feel free to. Sure. Then I'll pose the question to Ndubusi that just as Yele mentioned, I mean, we're not yet seeing the full embrace or adoption of these types of technologies, even though some of them have been around for more than 10 years, in the most vulnerable or for the most poor yet. But one of the things that's very promising about underlying crypto technology and blockchain is that it could make it possible to build in a more complicated or more a fully formed banking system that is more accessible. So people can send, save, spend value, secure it over the internet, transcending and maybe even leapfrogging traditional banking models. But I'm curious to know, based on what the kinds of communities that you work with, how can we make this kind of technology more inclusive?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, for Nigeria, financial inclusion is really one of our pillars, and it's something that we focus on for our intervention. And I think, yes, digital currencies, they can make it possible, to easily transact, and there are a number of advantages. But I think at the heart of the matter is really looking at it in terms of our context here in places like Nigeria and developing world. So we're looking at the channels of product delivery, and when you think about the internet bandwidth, I think here in places like Nigeria, it's about mobile phone penetration. But I think for digital currency to be relevant, the bottom line is that you need to have internet penetration in many of the areas that are rural and areas in places we operate as international INGOs. When you look at the statistics, internet penetration in Nigeria is only about 47%. And so it's largely skewed, like I said, towards cities and urban areas. I think, for Mercy Corps, we're already implementing interventions to empower key players in the value chain. At the end of the day, we really have to, for technologies to work, for blockchain technology to be relevant, you need to have internet. So it needs to be made available to players at the end of the game. For instance, we operate in many field areas in the northeast of Nigeria, beyond Maiduguri, the volatile areas, and we have prevention we perform there. And we have a challenge in that we need physical to many of these locations. And so we do use the mobile phone platforms. But again, when it gets to the key question, in a place that operate in these the question is, be the value for someone living in that area. Can they use digital resources or digital to gain value in the area? I think this is the challenge to get beyond the issue of the core in terms of the internet.
Thank you for that perspective. So let me just take that point and address it to some of the larger platforms, like the payment networks that are being formed, like Libra and Cello, to ask and kind of pose this question to you: as when we face the challenges, or when we try to face these challenges around exclusion, and want to leverage the promise of decentralized technology and blockchain technology for payments globally, I'm curious to know, how do you envision us being able to kind of bridge that chasm around connectivity, these kind of baseline infrastructure issues that are not specific to Nigeria per se, they're actually quite widespread. How do we see this actually playing out? Is it a question of time, or is it a question of something else? And how do you expect that to kind of unfold? We can start with you, Dante, and then I'll pose it to Ezekiel.
Sure. No, that's a great question, Alpin, and you hit on a really important point about conditions precedent that need to be in place in a market in order for fintech or any of these discussions that we're having today to reach their full potential. So needless to say, if you're going to use technology to improve financial inclusion, then it stands to reason that people have access to the internet, And it stands to reason that those financial technology platforms acknowledge an enormous challenge in the digital identity gap. So as much as we have 1.7 billion people without a bank account and roughly an equal number who are underbanked and subjected to high fees and a death by 1,000 cuts sort of operating model in the financial system, we also have 1 billion people with no form of nationally issued or generally acceptable identification. And so you have to triangulate on connectivity, identity, and authentication for these networks to really drive their full potential for financial inclusion. Having said that, of the 1.7 billion people, roughly 1 billion have access to a low-cost internet-connected device. And so I think part of the priority, and I would imagine Ezekiel and many others who are building these open source technology platforms, while it is somewhat simplistic, one of our biggest opportunities is to turn every single one of those internet-connected mobile devices into a compliant payment endpoint, right? That doesn't necessarily solve for the last mile issues and the low connectivity issues, but it certainly extends the perimeter of finance and payments a little bit closer, right? And this is where I think that opportunity can go a long way. The other point I would make very briefly is that, we live in a world with an enormous diaspora population. Many countries around the world have diaspora communities all over the world. The diaspora powers the world's most important global cash flow. Remittances, it's greater than $700 billion a year. It's a larger cash flow than foreign direct investment and official government development aid. And yet that cash flow is subjected to a 7% fee on average. And in it, the people who could afford it the least pay the most on both ends of the transaction. And so in a world where those mobile connected devices are a regulated payment endpoint and you could connect to the diaspora populations, not only is this a powerful pathway of reducing cost and speeding up cash coming into a country, it's a powerful pathway to then supporting commerce and a range of other financial transactions. But we have to triangulate on those gaps. They need to be filled.
Thanks, Dante. Ezekiel, if you have a comment, that'd be great on that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly we're all sort of hitting on the main issues. I mean, one of our biggest things was, to really help solve this problem. I mean, we really just wanted to focus on one of the biggest issues, which was connectivity. And so that's why we're a mobile first platform. So everything we've done has been designed to be used on a smartphone, but not just your latest iPhone, which is certainly exclusionary, but on even like the lowest level Android phone. To make sure that you're really getting the functionality there, you're getting it to the people, and you're working on these connectivity issues. And so we've spent a lot of time working on our technology to make sure that it is as light as possible. Certainly we, as an industry, we also need to figure out ways to make offline transactions work for a blockchain, recognizing that even some people don't have smartphones, right? Or even feature phones. At the Cello network, we're working with others to make sure that we have connectivity even with feature phones as well, because we want to cast as wide of a net as possible. The other thing that we're doing really is just trying to build an alliance. We have this thing called the Alliance for Prosperity, and the idea is that, for us at C Labs working on Cello, we don't obviously have all the answers, and we want to engage with the community, and we want to get their feedback, and we want to help support fintech companies that are working all over the world and that are working in their specific communities, and support them either through grants or support them through education and technical training, because the reality is that it's going to be people like Yele and Noah who are working on the ground, and they know their communities. They understand their communities, and we just want to help them and support them as much as possible, right? While also working with central banks to make sure that we're doing all of this in a safe and responsible way. But I think clearly, solving this idea of identity is a big issue. Solving the idea of connectivity is a big issue. And then just the user functionality, right? Because Yele made the point, right? Like we can we can make this technology, but if nobody really wants to use it, and if it's really difficult for someone to use it and it's not intuitive, then they're not going to use it, because they don't really care whether it's Celo or whether it's Libra or whether it's Ethereum. They just want something that makes their lives easier and solves their problems. And so I think that, all of us working together to figure that out.
Thanks. This is great. I actually wanted to address it, the next set of questions to, or the next question. We have about 10 minutes left. So I'll ask one more and pose it to Yele and Noah, as was just mentioned, around the topic of kind of innovation and how to set up the ecosystem so that we can actually come up with solutions that can scale and that are relevant to particular geographies. And I wanted to ask Noah and Yele. We could start with Yele first. We're seeing in the digital currency space a lot of different actors, some of whom are very large scale, really well capitalized and operating global platforms already, and others that are very regional, locally kind of oriented. And I'm curious to know whether you think or what could be done to make sure there's a kind of like a level playing field of competition in jurisdictions. So whether you're working in Nigeria or now that you're moving into Ghana and other places, do you have any comments on that?
So I think hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think my viewpoint in this would probably be not what would be expected, but essentially, for me, I got into this space because I genuinely believe that access to financial services is essential or access to quality financial services is essential for Africa's economic development, right? And I believe whether it's going to be local solutions or global solutions, we need to make sure that, we allow innovations to thrive. At the end of the day, a company like Bundle is based out of Nigeria. We have Nigerian engineers, and we're growing and scaling alongside the other players in the space that are not necessarily Nigerian, right? So for me, I think the vision and the problem we're trying to solve needs all hands on deck. And the beauty about sort of like digital assets is that it's actually quite difficult to lock people in, because at its core is interoperability. So unlike kind of traditional sort of tech ecosystems or sort of, technology layers or infrastructure wherein, it's quite difficult for users to move to a different platform. In crypto, it doesn't exist, right? It's really, really easy for you to take your digital assets and move to another wallet if for some reason you're not happy with what your current provider is doing. And so what that does is that it creates competition, it creates innovation, and it creates better products and services for the end customer. And so for us, like we stand on the shoulders of giants as Bundle, and I believe that sort of making sure as a regulator, kind of ensuring kind of the safety of consumers and promoting healthy competition is the goal.
Thanks, Yele. Appreciate that. And Noah, I wanted to ask you that just from the Uganda context, if you could speak to competition and what kind of regulatory environment will foster more innovation.
So I'd like to build my case just off the back of what Dante has shared and also what Yele has said. In general, more innovation, more competition leads to faster growth of the industry and of the sector. We've seen that not only in the blockchain space, but in the larger financial sector. And so riding on that, it's important, and what we are seeing our government doing is one, embracing innovation, and particularly innovation in fintech. This has not been the traditional modulus operandi, and so we have sandboxes with the Capital Markets Authority, which regulates our securities. We have sandboxes in the central bank, looking into new ways in which innovation is playing out in the financial sector. And that also, we have the corresponding regulations that are coming up that are responsive to this innovation. So I think there's some good work happening on that side. It's not the best anyway, but they have learned their lesson given the growth of mobile money. And they have said, look, we cannot stifle innovation anymore by putting, by tying things in red tape. How do we create an environment of dialogue and an environment of engagement where these new ideas can come on board, because we all want financial inclusion. Our government has a whole, 100-pager on a strategy for financial inclusion, and we are coming in as innovators with the tools that say, look, let's try this out and see how it works. And the good thing for us is that we have success stories like mobile money, etc. And so that is also that openness to engage has also helped us push the case for digital currencies. For DLT right now, the government is still on the fence on what to call digital currencies. But at least DLTs are getting an open hand and saying, okay, let's come and see how this can work. But then again, back to Data's point on the pillars that need, on the triangulation of how other problems we need to solve together, and tying that to Yele's point, many people addressing the same problem will move faster. And so some people are going to address the grassroots access, others are going to address, the infrastructure challenges. And so it's by working together that we can then see more people get involved. I'll end with our particular intervention in Uganda. So we're working with our regulator on a digital identity solution to bring access to financial services to people who are otherwise excluded, like refugees. Now, because refugees do not have any formal, identities, what happens is that they're registered with entities like UNHCR, but then our laws only require legally registered people to access SIM cards. Now, a SIM card is both a digital and a financial tool because of the prevalence of mobile money. A SIM card gives you access to mobile money, but then it also gives you access to your data plan. And so you find that digital and financial inclusion are hinged on that form of identity that is physical, that needs to be, the attestation needs to be made physically. And so what we bring in is we bring in an identity solution that is able to liberate and to secure, not only liberate, but secure these transactions of registration of these SIM cards, so that refugees who are initially excluded from accessing these digital services and can now access it. And we are looking, and because Uganda is one of the biggest hosts for refugees, we have about 1.5 million refugees in the country, half of whom are adults and need to communicate either back home, need to be economically engaged. So by secluding them from the economy, then it's a double problem. So we are intervening there. But then the interesting thing is that it has a knock-on effect to the rest of the financial inclusion story, because then by creating a digital identity at the mobile platform, where just to give you some quick statistics, Uganda is a population about 42 million, but we have about 23. Half the population is under 15, so we are a very young country. But then we have about 25 million mobile devices, active mobile devices. That means arguably every adult has a mobile device. And interestingly, we have about 23 million mobile money accounts. Compare that to 6 million bank accounts. So you find that the potential when you use digital services to open digital services to this huge population is immense. What that does is that by securing that SIM card layer, you're able to unlock KYC for innovators, which is what we're doing right now. So innovators don't have to hold personal data anymore with the stringent rules that govern them. But that can then now be liberated and so that innovators can continue building solutions that drive more inclusion, because this layer has already been addressed. So you can tackle financial exclusion directly or indirectly through solving problems of connectivity or identity.
Thank you so much, Noah. That's such a great example. And I actually want to use that and what you said to pose a question to Aisha around what kinds of collaboration can people have with the central bank to foster and to kind of develop more innovative innovation in a safe way, essentially, around these new technologies. As you've identified, we don't know if everyone is ready, and there are different segments that may be at different stages. but what are ways that you think that people who are looking to innovate and have the capacity and want to create new products, how can they collaborate with regulators such as yourself? Hi, Aisha. I think we're
Okay, sorry. I think I was muted, so I'm back now.
yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, and glad to be back. And the CBN recently commissioned regulatory soundbox. Initially we had released the policy for public comments, and we got a lot of that. We're glad to have that, and we're in the final stage. And I believe as soon as the regulatory sandbox is launched, we will be able to test and get many young innovators on the site to let's watch what innovation they have and how we can accommodate that into the policy. We have also uh, streamlined the licensing requirement in order to accommodate the young innovator. So what that means is during the sandbox launch or test, we can allow them have use of our exchange of API with some of the already regulated entities. So we also will monitor volumes so that we keep it simple in order to manage the risk. We're doing so much along that line, but I would always advise that for financial inclusion to scale up, you need government buy-in. We should always pursue that. In Nigeria, financial inclusion is a national strategy. So, and we've seen it grow tremendously from the percentage of unbanked to the increased percentage of banked that we have, or semi-banked that we have today. So we're also encouraging people to use the virtual platform rather than physical cash. So that way, you encourage people to get a unique identification, keep authentication simple. And like the former speaker has said, not everyone even seems to have the smartphone. So in Nigeria, we're encouraging the use of USSD. That's the platform that allow you to run your transaction without necessarily having an internet access, but yet you're able to carry on your transaction online real time. So we're doing so much more, and the vision, like I said, must come from top to down. It must be a national drive if you must scale. And we look forward to partnership, and we're also engaging other jurisdictions that are well vast in setup of their regulatory sandbox. So we're doing so much more to ensure that we scale up. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha, for that. We're at the top of the hour, which is the end of this session. And as you can see, there's actually quite a lot that we could be getting into and that we've already covered to some extent. And just to summarize, some of the key areas that we've been looking at are, what are different policy approaches from one country to another? How can we foster more competition in the space? And what are the use cases for digital currency in the context of financial inclusion? And to some extent, what are the preconditions? I want to thank all the panelists and all the members of this roundtable. A great discussion and all the input that people have provided. And I'm sure we will continue the conversation after. And I think that there's actually going to be another session with Jack Dorsey and Yele about later on today to discuss the future of blockchain and crypto in the region. So thank you to everyone, and I look forward to following up later.
Thank you, Alvin.
Yeah, thanks, Alpin.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.